Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Canisius. My name's Paul Zablocki, Development Gifts Officer for Canisius High School. And it's my pleasure to welcome Christopher Martin from the class of 1996. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. And why don't we get started by you telling us a little bit about your journey since you left Canisius High School?
Well, thank you very much. And of course, thank you for having me today. My time at Canisius, I think was really one of the most impactful periods of my life when you look back on it, and for reasons I think we'll touch on today. So after growing up in Buffalo, graduating from Canisius '96, I had the opportunity to go to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh with a couple of my classmates from the class of '96. Actually, I think that was probably right about when CMU, Carnegie Mellon CMU, started to recruit more heavily from the region, starting with a couple of kids with my friends, Jim Nash and Nate Steinwald from my class of '96, and then Brian Smith and I and Nate ended up going to Canisius. I liked it so nice. I did it twice, so to speak, for undergraduate and grad school. Stayed at CMU to get my graduate degree, both in the electrical and computer engineering. And then from there, joined Bosch, who some of you might know of. You might know from power tools, appliances, also the world's largest automotive supplier. And then, from there, I had the chance to really travel all over the planet, and lived in Germany for a couple of different times for many years. And now end up back here in Pittsburgh, running Bosch's Research and Technology Center, where we work on pushing the frontiers in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence.
Tell me a little bit about your time at Canisius and how it prepared you to enter this international workforce. I mean, you mentioned that you spent some time in Germany with one company, but an international presence, and and then now you're serving in a leadership position with your collegiate alma mater and your employer, this educational corporate collaborative. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
It's funny. We still, during the pandemic, like many of us, we sort of use these digital platforms to catch up with people that maybe we hadn't seen, as much. And so, almost every Friday during the depths of this thing, it was myself and several members of the class of '96 that would just catch up, almost every Friday at 9 o'clock. I mentioned already names like Brian and Nate, but also Jim Crane and Jeff Mishtakowski, all good class of '96 members. And I think we're a crew that, we talk about work without talking about work. It's not like, hey, well, what are you making or what are you doing or whatever. It's more, sort of broad strokes kind of thing. Like, what's the impact that you're seeing or having. I think a lot of times we do we say it with a smile, but we go back to referencing some of those phrases that were a little bit drilled into our collective heads back in the day. Phrases like "pursue excellence," "nothing else is worth your time." I think it's still on the billboard. Jesuit preparation for college and for life. And that got me to CMU and allowed me to put me in a good position to survive and thrive at CMU. But then the other one is we talk about the CHS, and we always talk about being sort of men for others. And now these days, I think it's almost expected, that people in leadership positions, take this servant leadership tack. This is something where the people that you're privileged to manage, they don't work for you. In many ways, the best leaders recognize that we work for them. It's our job to get the most out of the incredible men and women that are parts of our respective organizations. And I think that was something that, now we were just, again, early the last couple of days talking about, people like the specific teachers that affected all of our lives, Father Zanoni, Father Garaventa, people like that challenged us, but in that mold of that literally in the Jesuit tradition of servant leadership. I think somehow we weren't bright enough to recognize it at the time, but somehow that rubbed off on us in ways that we literally still talk about 25 years later, which is really remarkable.
So I love that idea of servant leadership. You know, we're blessed at Canisius to still have Father Zanoni as a member of our school community, Father Chuck Frederico, who's a head of our campus ministry, Father Mickey Corcoran, who's an alum of the school, and of course our president, you know, Father Cian Semino, who I believe was your principal. And you
That's
know,
correct.
there is that wonderful relationship with the Jesuits, but and I think in a lot of ways more so with our faculty and staff, where there's just that commitment and knowing that it's a very selfless process of forming and educating young men, and to see that it transcends into, you know, who you become is, you know, it's a testament to the type of education that we offer, and it's great that you guys are still reflecting on it, you know, all these years later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also we were um, we were certainly molded at the time in the era of Buffalo in which we grew up. You know, if you, I was just showing you before in our conversation before, you know, a T-shirt I still have from our post-prom party that has the names of all of the graduating seniors from the class of '96, and it's, you know, it's 12-point font, and you can easily fit it on the back of a T-shirt.
Yeah.
You know, that was right at the time in the mid '90s. Early to mid '90s, and my father and my uncles are also all CHS alums from back in the day as well. So it's sort of clearly our family is sort of been following the journey of Canisius all these years, you know, and that was right when we were starting to get back, and not necessarily credit to the class of '96 in any way, but certainly when Canisius was sort of in its ascendancy. But the city itself, you know, was still, I mean, let's be honest, you know, a little bit struggling at the time. You know, that we joke about, you know, Buffalo being the city of no illusions. And I think that was also a kind of a tacit recognition for all of us who came from all of the suburbs, you know, around Buffalo. Again, I mentioned my friends from Orchard Park and from Hamburg. You know, I was born in the city, but my family moved out to Williamsville and Clarence area. You know, coming together and recognizing that somehow, you know, we'd like to be a part of, you know, the success story of Buffalo going forward. Now, for me personally, I didn't end up, I mean, other than sort of going back and eating a lot of chicken wings and attending Sabres games, you know, it's not that I can't claim any credit for, you know, helping Buffalo come back, but you know, I took it with me for hopefully contributing to, you know, another sort of a sister Rust Belt city with Pittsburgh, and recognizing, you know, the value of the communities, the passion of the people in these places. And that's not to say that certainly, you know, people like still my friends, you know, back in Buffalo, John Attia and Doug Benz, you know, also them being entrepreneurs in the city in their own right and contributing to that. But I think that was also really part of it is recognizing that, you know, we don't exist in a vacuum. Canisius being an important part of the fabric of the Western New York community. And so it's you know, it was always important to us to think about, you know, what is our place in helping, you know, the city, you know, regain its right, what we think of sort of a rightful place and an important part in the state and in the nation.
It's wonderful that, you know, you're mentioning so many of your classmates who have had an impact in you know, kind of the renaissance of Buffalo. And you know, so tell me now, I mean, you mentioned you're in Pittsburgh, a brother, you know, Rust Belt city, and you talked about this servant leadership. You know, you've stayed within, and I think you've stayed within the one corporation for the majority, if not the entirety of your career. So how did you ascend in a path that finds yourself as, and then why don't you talk about your current position a little bit, and explain what you currently do and how you got there?
Sure. And so it was really also very lucky. Again, these choices that one makes in life, right? The choice to go to Canisius, you know, together with my parents, of course, at the time. And then the choice also eventually to go to Carnegie Mellon, you know, in the mid to late '90s. And that was, I mean, talk about the crazy time to be at, you know, one of the leading, you know, computer engineering, computer science institutions on the planet, you know, during that .com era, and where it was, you know, honestly, it was almost ridiculous. You know, at the time, it was, you know, every, you know, Microsoft, Intel, whatever, any tech company, you know, beating down the door in order to recruit, you know, us students as interns. So I had the opportunity to go work in Silicon Valley, work in Raleigh, Durham, in the Research Triangle Park down there. And I think what I also learned was sort of, and not that I don't want to take anything away from those regions, but I also learned that that sort of wasn't for me. The Silicon Valley culture, again, it's a powerhouse of innovation that has delivered, so much, value creation, or around the planet. On the other hand, it's not, it's the work in life, I don't want to say balance, but see the daily life down there just didn't really resonate with me, as opposed to the opportunities I saw after going to the Valley, down to North Carolina. It really resonated with Pittsburgh, again, maybe because it's similar to the type of culture that we grew up in Buffalo. It really resonated with me. And then, so that was why also I had the opportunity to join Bosch and say, hey, listen, I'm out of here from California. I'm going to go to Southwest PA. But then also, another sort of sister city, if you will. So where Bosch is headquartered in Germany is Stuttgart in Southwest Germany. And also a very, the region is called Swabia. Again, a very sort of, put your head down, get after it, hard work is valued, that type of, not glitz and glamour, that kind of culture also resonated with me, which gave me the chance to go and work over there and to experience what that meant, kind of a similar type of culture in a different country. So a chance to see what that meant from through the lens of a totally different, through a different country. And so these are the kind of things too, where I think that going through it, sort of being able to know where I could, something that it wasn't necessarily about finding those cultures that fit me. It was where could I go where I would be able to have, a positive impact, and it would sort of, we would resonate together. And that was something that for me, so as you mentioned, I joined Bosch, but then sort of going back and forth from Pittsburgh to Stuttgart, having the chance to also, again, visit different international locations, whether it's in China and India and all these kind of things, and to bring, sort of what we learned, growing up in Buffalo, that the value of hard work, staying true to yourself, making sure that you value people and don't treat them as cogs in a machine. I think that learning also that those sorts of values translate, wherever you are in the world, if you find a people and a culture that sort of that you're compatible with.
Talk a little bit about your personal network and how you've been able to use your friendships, your network, and your connections to advance yourself in your career.
A lot of, just to reference the group I was talking about, earlier, it really, of course, we had the benefit of several of us going to CMU, either for undergraduate or grad school. I think part of it was just a little bit was just always keeping each other honest. So if I talk about, a guy like Jeff Mishnikowski, right? He's a professor at the University of Buffalo. A guy like Brian Smith, now also, running a research program over at Draper up in Cambridge. So it wasn't, for us, it wasn't necessarily about like, how are we going to do business together? Now, don't get me wrong, just like all of us, you sit at the bar and have a Canadian, and are like, all right, we're gonna create the world's next greatest startup, and then you sort of go back to your day jobs, and it's quite okay. But even that exercise in sort of in imagination, right, in sort of our own sort of mini entrepreneurship, I think that we've just kind of kept each other honest in a lot of ways, to be like, all right, how can we, let's, to talk through some of the troubles in an the challenges that we have in an abstract sense, and to help each other out, to say, hey, have you seen that? Again, we don't spend a whole lot of time talking with each other about, this or that, or, our day jobs, but I think a lot of just having that connection to each other, I think has always just kind of helped us make sure that we, that pursue excellence thing. Again, we sort of laugh about it in some way, like referencing it, that we all remember it. But I think it's also reflecting on what on an indirect way of what that means for us in a daily life. I think also, as I grew to growing that, say, called the personal professional network here in Pittsburgh, is having the opportunity to be invited to join, various boards, whether it's the Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, the Carnegie Science Center, the German American Chamber of Commerce, in taking those, trying to take those obligations to serve, if you will, seriously. I think it's not just something where you're not doing it just to put it on a LinkedIn profile. You're doing it because, that's also a little bit of the expectation when you're when you've been, in a put in a position, lucky enough, as so many of us have here in leadership roles, there's also, I think, a little bit of an obligation to connect with other members of the community as well, and to do what you can for that. And that, I think, is also sort of an expectation that we have for each other and for ourselves, that if you have the time and the ability and you're invited to do so, I think that was also something that we share with each other, and try to again, just to kind of keep that bar high.
We have, spring is fast approaching in the Northeast. It's supposed to snow this weekend, so of course it's springtime. But we do have a number of young men in the class of 2022 who are sitting in the Montante Science Center, or the Beecher Academic Wing, and they're reflecting on or making final decisions, or have committed to where they're going to go to school next year, and they're looking at life beyond Canisius High School. Do you have any advice, 2 or 3 things that you would, wish to impart on those young men as they wrap up their time at Canisius High School?
One of the things that I was lucky enough to be able to do while I was at Canisius was to, and it's kind of cliche, and from following at least the social media and newsletters from CHS, it seems that now that there's so much more support, around, being yourself in so many ways, right? So, we were joking about my Canisius bowling team polo shirt here from back in the day. And, I was really lucky enough to just to in so many ways be myself at Canisius in ways that, I don't know, I see in other places where maybe it's not that easier. It's more of a struggle. Where we taking, whether it's finding the time to take AP classes, that was a huge boost to my college career. Almost to the point where through the support of our guidance counselors at CHS, but also at CMU, was able to take over so much college credit over to CMU that allowed me to then continue to pursue my own professional interests in engineering and all these kind of things. So I know it's a little bit cheesy, in some ways, and I guess the advice maybe is for more the sort of freshman, sophomore, junior type of folks. But if you to be able to just pursue what is of interest to you. Whether it's being on the bowling team, where I can say that's definitely not where the cool kids hung out, so to speak, back in the day. But we had a really great time, and also having that, we had a really great set of teachers. Again, I mentioned Father Garaventa and things like taking AP US history. Speaking of setting the bar high, one of a really formative teacher at the time, Mr. Goldie, back in the day in physics, which again, which is a huge boon going into and being put in a good position to succeed at really a top tier institution like CMU. But again, these were opportunities, choices that were given to us, and one could have made different choices, and that's completely fine. But I think especially for me, it was early on being able to be myself and draw confidence from that, to say, hey, look, you know what, if you want to go bowling, if you want to play tennis, if you want to study physics, if you want to focus on AP history, like, that's more than okay, and that's celebrated. And I hope that's also what students feel even more supported at the time, because it was something that CHS did for me at the time, and I hope it's something that students now also are able to find their own way, given all the opportunities that CHS presents them.
Christopher, I want to thank you for taking the time today to share your experience and offer a great reflection on what Canisius meant for you, and also to reflect a little bit on the contributions that you and a lot of your classmates have been able to make to not just the Pittsburgh community or the Buffalo community, but the world at large. So thank you for spending some time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invitation, and good luck to us all as we weather the spring snow.
Thanks.